SoulFolk. Have you ever heard of that? Well, today on When We Speak, I'll be speaking with Joy Ike, who I proclaim to be the architect of SoulFolk.
So I will leave my scars, you can leave yours too. Go real far and build a house out on the moon. Live like we are nomads, and our kids will know the meaning of love the world and love thy God, and it won't grow.
When we speak.
Multinahi words from the last Death and life are in the power of the tongue.
When we speak.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly would you say is SoulFolk?
I mean, I personally feel like SoulFolk is essentially a soulful version of folk music. I think folk music often gets reserved for, acoustic guitars and banjos, but I think folk music is very versatile, and I think there are probably, so many different styles of folk music, and folk music is very dear to my heart, and I think it has informed my songwriting for so many years. So, and I play with folk-inspired artists and other instruments like the upright bass and the cello. So those kind of contribute to my sound and are the reasons why I consider it soul folk.
Okay. Now, if I were to go into a record store, which is hard to find, but
these days,
I know, right?
Yeah.
But if I went into a record store, what would I find your music characterized?
Probably pop.
Okay.
Probably pop music. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely has many pop elements in it. I think it goes back and forth between pop. It could be in the R&B world a little bit, maybe a little bit of jazz, but definitely pop music.
Okay. Do you think it should be in those categories?
Definitely in the pop music category.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
not necessarily so jazz.
No, I don't honestly really like jazz music.
Really?
I don't.
No,
No.
I'm just joking. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I like all music.
That's
really.
funny. You know what? That surprises people a lot, but I'm not. I don't really like jazz music, but I do love a good jazz voice. You know.
Yeah.
So. And I also enjoy watching live jazz music because I enjoy watching other musicians who are good at what they do. Do that on stage. So it's very different, but it's not something I would necessarily listen to on my own time.
I don't wanna make the world my guide. Give up everything for nothing. I don't care who you think you are. Everything you have, everything you have will fall apart.
Now, I know that a lot of artists, they always say that they're very different and that they are their own unique person. And so it almost makes it seem as if they don't like being classified. And we know why you classify stuff, so you know where to find it.
Exactly.
But I guess what I would like to know is, how can I ask you this question? How does the classifications that the industry put on you, how does that help you, though, with broadening your audience?
Well, I think it's really important to, as much as no one ever wants to be classified, it's really important to give things labels because it does give people expectations of what to expect whenever they're going into a situation that they're not familiar with. For myself, this is my first time in Atlanta, and it's really been a great experience. But people have never heard my name. People don't know who I am. So the first thing I want to do is tell them, well, this is what I sound like. And if you like these artists, then you'll want to come to the show. So it basically opens a door and makes it possible for me to reach a new audience.
What is, musically, when you think of being safe or being what's normal for you, what would you consider to be like your musical safe place? Whether it be a particular song or a particular style or
My musical safe place. That's an interesting question. My musical safe place actually has nothing to do with music.
Really?
It has everything to do with the people that I'm around.
Okay.
If I'm comfortable with the people who are in the room, then all reservations are put aside. So for me, I've always loved playing house shows. real small, intimate spaces, living rooms, and just being in a small group of people and sharing my songs. Because for me, there's so much safety in that. There's that weight of possibility of being vulnerable and sharing, like, not just the songs, but the stories behind the songs with just a few people. So it almost feels like you're hanging out with friends and not necessarily putting on a concert. So for me, that's definitely my safe place, and it's where I feel most at home.
35 summer years ago, you left your word to make a new home in this new place. Yeah. Dad and Mom, you sure are brave to let it all go and pave your own way. So I hope you're happy with me. I hope you're happy.
Speaking of home, though, with me, I always say that my mother, well, I grew up singing gospel music, and that was like my first real introduction to realize that I could sing at all. And so I always say that when my mother started going to church and all this other stuff, some people gave her music because she was not familiar with gospel music. And I always say that that had a big influence on who I became musically. So how does your heritage or your parents influence your sound?
It's something I never thought seriously about until maybe two or 3 years ago. I grew up in a Nigerian home. My parents came here about 37 years ago now, and African culture in general is surrounded by music, drums especially, but music is everywhere. So I know my parents weren't intentional about it, they never thought about it, but music was just like a huge part of our home. There was always singing. Harmonies were a big deal, we never thought about that either, but by default there were always 3-part harmonies, and there's always music just ringing in the air on a daily basis. And so in hindsight, I know that was really a huge part of like my upbringing, and a huge reason why I decided to get into music. And I'm seeing it now starting to work into my songwriting and the stories behind my songs.
Wash over me. I hear a beat on the ground and it makes me sing. I hear a beat on the ground and it makes me sing. I hear a
Before we started, we were talking about your name, how we say Joy Ike, but it's actually pronounced Joy Ike, right? So what I did is I was like, you know what? You need to look up and see if you can find out what her name means.
Okay.
And this is what I read. I don't know how true it is. This is what I read. I'm hoping you know. But anyway, I read that it means might or power. Do you know?
I don't, because actually my parents' full name when they came here was Ikanyawo. And they shortened it. Yeah, because they shortened it because no one could say it. So they shortened it to Ikeh. But still people were mispronouncing it with the H, so they took the H off. So it's Ike now.
So now it totally killed my question. No, I'm just joking, because I'm still going to ask you anyway.
Yeah.
So by my definition, I thought about joy and Ike, and since it said it was power, I said, okay, joy, power. So I guess the question would be, what is Joy's power?
What is my power? That is a question of questions.
No, I couldn't answer that. I'd be like, I don't know. No.
Yeah, that's a hard one. No doubt, God is my strength. He's my strength. And there's this verse in the Bible that says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." And that's an important verse to me. And I don't claim it just because my name is Joy, but it's the truth. And it's like I'm just reminded all the time. We have all these plans that we make for ourselves, and we think they're great plans, and then they crash and burn, and then we get angry at God because we start to blame him for things going wrong when we never even included him in the picture in the first place.
Exactly.
And so it's just a reminder to me that, you know, I can make all these plans and they could never go right because I didn't put God in the picture in the first place.
Okay. Now, in your blogs, because I noticed you write a lot of blogs. I mean, you do a lot of blogging. You know. So what kind of started you with the whole blogging?
Well, I've been blogging for years, but I put out an album a few months ago at the beginning of this year called All or Nothing. And the album in and of itself is really about living a life that's all or nothing. You know, doing everything to the best of your ability and just putting all of yourself into everything you do. And a couple months before releasing the album, I just started thinking about the fact that there are so many people and so many things and so many ideas that reflect this mentality that I would love to acknowledge and love to write about. And my background is as a publicist, and I love marketing, and I love, if I weren't making music, I would be promoting other people making music. And so I've always loved pushing other people's things. And so I was like, what if I had a blog where I could just talk about not just ideas, but talk about other people who are just doing what they love and doing it well. And so that's kind of where the whole All or Nothing blog came from.
Okay, so we kind of got something in common, because that's kind of how I started.
The friends you had, they betrayed you when you turned your back, poisoned your water. When your water, it was all you had. Oh, 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 oh. Hey.
And you talked about being a publicist and all this. So you actually stopped doing that to pursue your music, is that right?
Yeah, I stopped that a little over 5 years ago, and I was working at a publishing company, and I loved publicity, and I still love it to this day, but it was almost like this war. I was trying to decide what I loved more and how to make both work.
Well, you know, what I want to know, like, how did you finally determine that, you know, it was the right time to actually pursue something that to me is like so uncertain financially, you know, because the music industry is kind of very uncertain, you know, you don't know which way to go.
Yeah.
So when did you finally realize that it's time?
Well, I think it just came from a year, maybe even more than a year, but just a year of unrest. You know, I just kept going back and forth, and I was like, you know what, at this point, you can't not do it. You can't let it pass you by, because when you have the opportunity, why not jump on it? And I think I knew that I would regret it eventually. At some point, I was going to regret it if I didn't do it. And the worst thing that could happen was that I wouldn't go well, you know. And if that happened, I always had other things to fall back on. So I just thought I had to give it a try.
To love you like I do. No matter what you say, I'm gonna love you anyway. You know you just come and go. People are starting to think that I'm shallow. Someone, you need someone, you need someone to love you like I do. Oh, 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 oh.
So Joy, thank you so much for sitting with us today. I mean, like I said, it's, you know, honestly, I really enjoyed this, and you can understand, because you know what I mean about, you know, helping other people and promoting other people and just watching people do their passion. Hey everybody, this is Jermaine Sain. I just want to remind you that at the bottom of your screen, you can hit the like button, or if there's a thumbs up, you can hit the thumbs up. So always remember that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and continue to support indie music.